Field notes from the bottom of the top. I posted a video about dating recently, and I almost immediately moved it to friends only. Not because I was ashamed, I've shared far more online, but because it felt too exposed, too raw in a way I don't usually let myself be in public. Not because I don't feel these things, but because I usually try to filter those feelings through analysis. That's the tension that I live with. Because I'm both a researcher and a poet, I feel everything fully. And then I go study the systems that made me feel that way. The irony of all of this is that I study power for a living. I analyze how structures move, how incentives shape behavior, how narratives drive public and private decision making. I lead a team that does this every day. I teach graduate students how to recognize systemic patterns in everything, from elections to education. And yet, I keep finding myself stuck in one of the most persistent social patterns there is, the hierarchy of desirability. There's no version of me that buys into it, not intellectually. I reject the idea that there is a fixed order to who deserves care, but I still see it. I still feel it. And if I'm being honest, I still live inside of it, especially as a dark-skinned Black woman who sits very clearly at what I've started to call the bottom of the top. Because on paper, I'm exactly what the hierarchy claims to reward. I'm attractive, well-educated, grounded, emotionally self-aware, and stable. I come from generational support, not chaos. I speak well, I present well. I've done the personal and professional work to be a whole person. And I'm pursued. I go on beautiful dates. I get taken care of, affirmed. Men tell me they've never met someone like me, that I am what they've always been looking for. And still, once I let them in, once I reciprocate, once I open, the pressure almost always drops. The intentionality fades. The care gets replaced with a quiet assumption, like the goal was to win my attention, not sustain the connection. I see this most clearly when I compare it to how those same men show up for other women, women who are just as smart, just as beautiful, but lighter, wider, closer to the default setting in this country that has always been prioritized. I've run the comparison, I've stood next to them, and I've watched it happen in real time. The difference is subtle, but it's constant. Who gets followed up with? Who gets introduced to family? Who gets consistent communication? Who gets effort that isn't front-loaded? Who gets chosen with ease instead of doubt? And that's what I'm left with over and over again. It's the realization that I am rarely treated as central, not because of who I am, but because of how race, gender, and desirability politics continue to intersect in private spaces no one wants to name as political. This isn't just about rejection, it's about pattern recognition. Because I'm not confused. I know what I offer. I know what I am. For many of these men, honestly, probably the most grounded and generous woman they've had access to. But I also know how I'm being processed as someone to impress, not someone to invest in, as someone they see as aspirational, but not someone they instinctively center. The most frustrating part is that I see it while it's happening. I can name every point on the curve. I can tell you when the messages will start to slow down, when the follow-through will shift to vagueness, when I'll feel the need to over-explain my softness just to avoid being misunderstood. Because I am not positioned at the bottom of the social hierarchy, but I'm not secure at the top either. I'm in that quiet, invisible category no one wants to talk about. The high-status woman who is still expected to do the emotional labor of proving her worth. The woman who's not just a lot, but is always expected to handle a lot without asking for anything in return. I've spent years studying how power hides in plain sight, how social scripts condition us to act without realizing we're upholding a hierarchy, And I still find myself sitting across from men who want me in theory, but don't have the range to hold me in practice. And that's not a wound, that's a system. And what I'm trying to do, with this piece, with that post, with my own voice, is simply name it. Not as a grievance, but as a record. Because I truly do not believe that most of these men are villains. And I'm not heartbroken, but I'm aware. This is what it means to live at the bottom of the top. It's to be highly pursued, but rarely prioritized. To be admired, but never maintained. To be what men prove themselves against, not what they commit to within. So, I'm not confused, but I am tired. I'm tired of being studied instead of known, of being performed for instead of partnered with, of being told I'm the one until it's time for someone to act like it. This isn't a confession, it's a field note, because when you've spent your entire life studying the system, you eventually have to admit when it's studying you.